Tonight on the finish line, we are discussing the latest on Stephen Ross entertaining a $10 billion offer for the Dolphins, Hard Rock Stadium, and the whole F1 getup. We will talk about that in great detail. Also, should the Miami Dolphins be targeting Justin Simmons over Odell Beckham Jr. after the draft? We'll talk about that. Plus, we'll talk a lot about Chop tonight. We got so much to cover. Please do us a favor, smash the like button, subscribe if you are new, and as always, let's get into this.
Touchdown! Got it! You have got to be kidding me. Jalen Waddle has a Dolphin touchdown. And he will score! Field down the near side, man open, touchdown! The run from Tagovailoa. Touchdown! He's going deep. He's got it for a touchdown again!
Beautiful day to be a Dolphin fan. Let's go!
All right, huddle up, huddle up. We're gonna crank these engines up on one. All right? Wait, 80. Wait, set. Drivers, start your engines.
This is the finish line.
I coached some great offensive linemen in the past. Larry Little, Dwight Stevenson, Jim Langer, all Hall of Famers, and Richmond Webb belongs to that same group.
Here are your hosts, legendary Miami Dolphins left tackle Richmond Webb, Reason, and Mr. Ballgame.
What is good, Fin Nation? What's good? It's your boy Reason. We're back here for another one with the man who is returning from D-Town, Mr. Richmond Webb. And Richmond, I'm gonna have to get a duo setup here at the rate ball game hasn't been showing up over the last couple months, instead of the special guest label. We're gonna have to change that up.
Man, we making you work too hard. It's 1 week it's me, 1 week it's ball game. But man, I'm glad to be back, and I had an opportunity to jump in. I know it was a lot of probably feedback and stuff last week, but just to jump on with you guys for a few minutes and talk about the draft and actually be there, and just fortunate and thankful that the Dolphins allowed me that opportunity, and I got to see a lot of guys I played with and all that. So it was just great. Me and the wife, we had a really good time. It was a little colder than what I was expecting in Detroit, but other than that, it was good. So just glad to be back on the show and chop it up, and hopefully we can rub on a lamp or something and see if we can get Mr. Ballgame to pop in here sooner or later.
Yeah, and you also gave you a chance to show off your best Sunday fit, huh? Look at your best Easter fit, right?
Yeah, I had to put a suit and tie on. Even when I go to church, a lot of times I wear tie and stuff. But moments like that, you got to do, and just the way I was raised and stuff like that. And that was around attire and all that. And then when I went out on the stage, and I heard all the Dolphin fans screaming "Hall of Fame, Hall of Fame," I was trying to figure out what they're saying. When I did, I started laughing. I said, "Oh man, I got to hold it together." And started smiling. It was able to make the pick and got the name right. I was happy about that because Patrick Paul is pretty simple, pretty easy. But I know a couple people struggle with, just had I got that name there and then. And I looked at him, the kid with size and ability. I thought it was a really good pick, especially after the first round pick with Robinson. I watched that. So I thought we did pretty good in the draft. I was extremely happy what the Dolphins did this year.
Yeah, especially on day 3, they cleaned up the value that they got. And every time they picked, even when they traded up for Jalen Wright out of Tennessee, I did a show this week and I said, to me, the most talented player they drafted was Chop. The best value pick to me was Jalen Wright when you add in where they drafted him compared to where he should have gone, along with talent, right? He should have probably been gone in the 60s to 70s, and we got him at 120. So, high ceiling with a lot of these players they drafted. I think Malik Washington is another interesting one. I don't know if you heard today, but while I was out for dinner, I got a call from the homie EM Dolphin fan, and I guess he was listening to the Big O show today. And Big O basically went on, apparently, I haven't had a chance to listen to it. Apparently, he went on record and said that someone connected to the team has told him this is Tyreek's last year. They're fed up with him. And so, I mean, things that might pick up here, over the next 365 days. But, next year he hits like $46 million in his cap hit and they have an out. And, the way it was being worded with Big O is that the team's fed up with kind of the baggage that's coming along with him right now. And, listen, you watched Hard Knocks, right? Didn't you feel... You remember that episode where Tyreek came into the quarterback room and it was just him and Tyreek? Didn't that feel a little forced and awkward? I brought this up, and I mean, you've been around in these locker rooms and stuff. One thing that both Martin and EM noticed during Hard Knocks that they pointed out to me was, if you noticed when they did the meetings, Tyreek wasn't sitting with Tua and he wasn't sitting with the receivers. Who was he always sitting with? Xavier Howard. And we know about Xavier Howard's adventures through Miami off the field, right? And we know how Tyreek gets down off the field a little bit, right? It just feels like, I'm gonna be honest with you. Well, yeah, we know now. But it feels like Tua and Waddle, they have a good relationship, but I think it's because they're more relatable in terms of, I think family, faith, and such, holds something, right? I'm not saying family don't hold anything to Tyreek, right, but they live much more by, family and faith than, Xavier Howard sure did. You know what I mean? So, shout out to Xavier Howard. I'm not knocking. Hey, how you live your life is how you live your life. This is why I always said, if I was ever a professional athlete, I wouldn't have got married till after I retired. That's just because I know me. I know I would have liked to have fun while I was out there, right? You know what I mean? Yeah. And I don't mean, I mean like, not having someone to answer to. I don't mean like, so, yeah. So I don't know.
It's it's tough. I think not only the Dolphins, but any franchise, whether it's major sports franchise, your key guys, your superstars or whatever, those are who the fans, a lot of, they're going to sell the jerseys. That's who most people gravitate to. Not saying they don't like the other players, but, Tyreek came here and kind of helped change the attitude, hard worker, this and that. But I think you said it best. It's the off the field issues, it was the altercation with the guy he got into.
Yeah.
It was with the house caught on fire. Luckily, nobody was hurt. And then
multiple baby mama issues. We had multiple baby mama issues.
That just came out. It was more than what was expected. And then
the Instagram model that broke her foot, right, or whatever that he brought out there. The other Instagram model. Remember? Did you ever hear about that or no?
I'm glad I didn't hear about that.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll fill you in quickly. What happened was basically he had a camp. He has the Tyreek camp, the Tyreek Hill camp, and an Instagram model. She brought her kid to the camp. Okay. After the camp session, she went back to his house with the kid. All right. I'm not here to speculate on what went down, but obviously it was a good enough time where they were exchanging text messages and he flew her back out. And when he flew her back out, this is what she says. When they flew her back out, she went to his house. They were in the backyard, and his buddies were there, and they were like practicing, like, they let her line up as a receiver, and he played defender. And she claims that she broke her ankle in the process. And she also released text messages, and in some of the text messages, Tyreek Hill was alluding to the fact. I mean, not alluding. He was basically straight up saying, like how he's a good stepfather and stuff. And this is all while he's married to Kenny Vaccaro's sister, the woman he's married to right now. And then remember, we had the divorce filing, that ordeal.
That's what I was going to bring up. It was just it's too much, and and then the thing that tops it all, like you say, next year, if your cap value is going to be $46 million for a receiver, and we see the averages for some of these receivers going toward $30 million,
and they got to pay Waddle,
and they got to pay Waddle, and Tyreek's got to be next year? Be his ninth year or something like that. He's getting close to 10.
Is he 31 or 32 next year? I'll tell you right now.
Okay, I think he's 30.
He's on the other side of 30 right now. I know that for sure.
Yeah.
He's 30 years old. So in next March, he'll be 31.
Yeah. So it's just the extra baggage. I think he has it. It's just the off the field, the distractions and stuff like that. And teams will look at that. It's like you say, Waddle could easily be a number one, and he stood up under Tyreek for a couple of years, and you keep adding, guys like what we're getting now. It just makes it easier when you have, and you keep adding quality guys, and if they develop, it makes it easier to cut a guy that's the top receiver in the room. So yeah, crazy. I've been hearing about it too. I just like, man, if you could just stay out the press, that would be a good thing. But when you
I think even if he was keeping his nose clean a little bit, Richmond, this wide receiver market, the new Waddle contract is going to be somewhere between $25 to $30 million at least right now if we signed it. Yeah. Even if he was making 30 instead of 45, do you really see them spending $60 million on two wide receivers?
Mm-mm. No, that ain't gonna happen. No. Mm-mm.
Yeah, that's just way too much.
Yeah. And like you say, they got Javon Holland, they got Tua. You got a core group of guys, but you can't blow it out on a few of them, and then you're gonna be having issues. Probably like the Cowboys, they couldn't really go out and get free agent stuff because of cap issues. So you got to be smart, and you got to run it like a business. So everything is definitely pointing toward that, and I don't think it'll be a surprise, but normally dropping dimes in your ear, brother. I'm telling you, you get it, and it's reliable people. So it's definitely something people should continue to just watch and just pay attention to. You ain't got to say nothing, just watch and see what happens. But definitely a good point. I hadn't even thought about that, but when you brought up that plus his value next year, it just makes sense.
Yeah, I just and listen, I think he's the best player, arguably the best player in football. So I'm not even sitting up here saying I'm in favor for it. You know what I mean? But his cap hit in 2025 increases to $34.243 million. Then in 2026, it jumps to $56.308 million.
Yeah.
I just, I don't know. I don't see how that works in terms of getting out, right? Like and the out is in 2025. So the out is in the upcoming, basically him and Chubb have their out in the same year, 2025, next year. And listen, I know they drafted Muhammad Kamara and they drafted Chop, so he doesn't feel the pressure to come back. You know what I mean? But you can't tell me as a competitor, he ain't going to be putting the pressure on himself. You know what I mean? Because, especially if these guys start developing in year one, oh my God, right? Like, and so next year, if they were to cut him next year, they would take a dead cap hit of $11.3 million and they would save $22.9 million. If they cut him in 2026, they would take a dead cap of 11.3, but they would save $45 million.
Yeah.
And it's cutting, not
him-
trading. If they trade him, it's the same exact numbers.
The handwriting could definitely be on the wall. And like you said, you've got to be motivated to get back on the field. When you take your first round pick is the edge, the guy that's going to rush the passer. I understand you heard Jalen Phillips, but Jalen was the guy that we drafted here. He's younger. You know, I figure he's gonna be here. But if I'm Chubb, I got traded over, from Denver. This and I'm a little bit older. And if Chop turns out and really starts doing it, makes it just more accessible to save that money and put it somewhere else. And
I agree.
It's just that. So yeah, he's got to be motivated to get back out on the field and try hold that young pup off as long as he can, because from the highlights I saw draft night, the kid play. He's raw, but he's got a high motor and he gets after it. So yeah.
Love him. So Tyreek, you take a dead cap hit of 11.3, like I said, and you save 22.93 million. If you cut Chubb next offseason, you take a 9.1 million dead cap hit, but you save another 20.2 million. So between cutting Tyreek and Bradley Chubb, they save like $43 million, and they only take about a dead cap hit of 20. And we've been one of the lowest dead cap hit teams over the last couple of years. We don't have a lot of dead cap. So, and if he's still the owner, Stephen Ross, if they convince him, would probably be willing to write that check, right? So, very, very interesting stuff that was said. I have not checked in on the news. I'm gonna talk to some people tonight and tomorrow and try and see if I can hear anything on that. But let's hop into this. Speaking of Stephen Ross, I got two articles here. Let's read them out for everyone. We'll read the article that broke the story. Then we'll read the article follow-up from Barry Jackson, who's one of the best in the biz. So this here is how the story broke today. Safadine, who used to be on the Dolphins beat, who's now writing for USA Today, said a $10 billion offer rejected. Miami Dolphins not for sale as F1 race drives up valuation. Miami Dolphins owner Stephen Ross and CEO Tom Garfinkel will host their third Formula One Miami Grand Prix, knowing their courageous venture into one of the world's fastest growing sports has elevated their NFL business. Ross recently entertained a stunning $10 billion offer for control of the Dolphins, Hard Rock, and the F1 Miami race. This nearly matches the combined record-setting sales of the Denver Broncos at $4.65 million in 2022 and the Commanders at $6.05 million in 2023. Two people with direct knowledge of the situation told USA Today Sports. They spoke on the condition of anonymity due to sensitive nature on the matter. Ross declined the offer because he wants to keep the assets in his family, the two people said. Still, the offer shows the ceiling of NFL franchise valuations, and sports conglomerates continue to rise exponentially. Ross and Garfinkel have successfully infiltrated and elevated F1 thanks to the capital and vision devoted to transforming their stadium campus where 90,000 people will roam daily, Friday through Sunday, as reigning F1 champion Max Verstappen aims for his third consecutive Miami win, and artists such as Ed Sheeran and Mark Anthony will perform. Fans can flaunt status and spread FOMO vibes to their social media followers after spending anywhere from $450 for a campus pass to roam about the grounds to $600 to $1,225 for seats to watch the action from the grandstands. That's crazy. $600 to watch cars go do laps really fast. Wow. Others could spend $4,000 to $12,200 in a premium luxury areas with high-end food and alcohol for the 3-day event. There's also a fair expectation South Florida will see more than $1 billion combined economic impact following its third race, according to Jeremy Aguero, principal analyst for economic research from Applied Analysis, which reported the first two races brought in $798 million to the area. Sports Corp Limited founder Mark Gannis, a longtime consultant who has worked closely with NFL teams and other sports franchises, said the Dolphins Stadium overhaul is one of the great sport business success stories of the last decade. Quote, I guess the Dolphins' entire operation, not just the team, in the top 5 in the NFL. It's a transformation of the entire operation to arguably the most successful, diversified regional sports entertainment operation in the country. And by the way, let me just say, and globally in the world. So Ross, he's privately invested more than $1 billion into the property since 2008 to host Super Bowls, college football national titles, the Summer Copa Americana final, and World Cup games in 2026. A massive undertaking in 2022 to transform the parking lot into a world-class racetrack had already paid off for the F1's expansion in the U.S. So it even goes into here about how Dallas Cowboys executive Stephen Jones praised the Dolphins, right? And what they're doing and everything like that. So it just gets a little bit more into, the Formula One here. And then finally it says, although Forbes valued the Dolphins 11th at $5.7 billion last August and Ross's Sports Empire 16th globally at $6.9 billion earlier this year, the recent $10 billion offer could influence a rise on the Forbes list. So here it is. Citadel hedge fund founder Ken Griffin, considered the richest person in Florida with a net worth of $35.4 billion, was in negotiations for a minority stake in the Dolphins Hard Rock Stadium in the F1 race, valued at $7.5 billion before talks amicably ceased. Two people with knowledge of the situation said. Griffin did not propose the $10 billion controlling offer, a person close to him told USA Today Sports. The person spoke under the condition of anonymity due to the sensitive nature of the matter. It's important to note investors buying minority shares typically receive a 20 to 30% non-controlled discount on overall value, Gannis said. Other factors like location, the scarcity to own one of 32 NFL teams contribute to rise in controlling premiums. Doing the math, the $10 billion controlling offer Ross received is in line with those numbers. The Cowboys were valued at $9 billion, the Patriots at $7 billion, the Rams at $6.9, the Giants at $6.8, and the Bears at $6.3. And those are the top valuations in the NFL according to Forbes. Mark Anthony Fergie, Venus and Serena Williams, and Bruce Beal, president real estate of the realted companies, are Dolphins minority partners. So there you go. Bruce Beal still owns a share. And people might remember Bruce Beal is the one who brought Tom Brady to the yacht. He's the one who pushed that. Bruce Beal is a lot of the reason why we lost draft picks. But Ross was also chairman and founder of the related companies and has a net worth of $10.1 billion, still seeks investors from minority shares to fund other sports endeavors. Multiple investors have noticed Miami's Super Bowl size event on a global stage. So that is a story that broke everything today. Now I'll go ahead and we'll read it here. This is what Barry Jackson had to say in terms of Stephen Ross projects enormous offer for the Dolphins, what his plan is now. Stephen Ross declined an enormous offer to sell controlling interest in the Dolphins, Hard Rock Stadium, and the weekend's Formula One Miami Grand Prix at his stadium, a source confirmed. And Ross has no intention of selling majority interest in the Dolphins to anyone. Multiple sources directly involved in the process reiterated Wednesday. A USA Tuesday report on Wednesday said Ross rejected a $10 billion offer from an unnamed buyer for controlling interest in the Dolphins Hard Rock Stadium in the F1 race. A source with direct knowledge did not dispute the accuracy of that report. Ross in recent months has advanced talks about a complex deal that would have given a minority stake in the team to hedge fund owner Ken Griffin, who relocated from Chicago to South Florida in the past 2 years. Ross and Griffin have an ongoing nearby real estate projects in South Florida. A source said they discussed a deal that would have had both parties, including Griffin, obtaining a majority stake in the Dolphins stadium and the F1 race. Griffin, who has a report net worth of nearly $37 billion, is the only person with that type of wealth who has publicly been linked to the Dolphins in the pursuit. But those talks with Griffin ended in recent months. Forbes values the Dolphins at $5.7 million, which is the 11th highest. A source who works for Ross said internal valuation of the team itself is at least $6 billion. In 2008, Ross purchased 50% of the Dolphins, the stadium and the surrounding land, from then owner Wayne Huizenga for $550 million, with an agreement to later become the Dolphins' managing general partner. On January 20th, 2009, Ross purchased an additional 45% of the team. The total value of the deal was $1.1 billion. The value of NFL teams has skyrocketed in recent years. where the Denver Broncos were sold for 4.65 in August 2022, 4.65 billion, and the Washington Commanders were sold for 6.05 billion. Ross, 83, intends to leave the team in the hands of his daughter Jennifer Ross. Forbes reports Ross's net worth at 10.1 billion. So, what's up, ball game?
What up? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you. You're good. Yeah.
What up, ball game?
Okay. Man, where we at, bro?
Where we at is Ross turned down a $10 billion offer for the Dolphins, the F1 and the Hard Rock Stadium. So let's start off with you, Richmond, and then we'll get to ball game, because we were talking about before we went live. You were around when the whole Joe Robbie fiasco went down, because that's the thing. Okay, he intends to leave it to Jennifer Ross as what it said, right? But you get, correct me if I'm wrong, you get hit with a massive tax when you take over a team. If I remember correctly,
tax,
yeah, it's an inheritance tax, right? Ball game. So an inheritance tax on something, a tax on something that could be valued. You guys know taxes in the U.S. better. An inheritance tax on something that could be valued $10 billion. How much are we talking here that she needs to have just to pay to take over the team?
34%.
Well,
34%?
No, 55.
Is it
55%?
It's 55. That's what it used to be. I need to check it. It might have went down to 34, but when I was playing, it was 55%. But Mr. Ross would not, as long as he don't have the team in his name and he dies, then you don't have to do that. It's when you die and he's the sole owner, the family gets hit with an inheritance tax. So he could put the Dolphins in a trust and avoid that. That's what happened with the Robbie family. It was in Joe Robbie's name, and so when he died, I think they had, Mr. Huizinga, I think he first came in for like maybe 140 million, but probably half of that went to pay the inheritance taxes, and then they left the Robbie family with some money. But yeah, I have to Google it, but it used to be like 55% was inheritance tax, but I'll look it up in a minute, once ball game starts chiming in.
Yeah, you look it up while ball game chimes in.
Yeah, go ahead, ball game.
I think it's a smart move on his part. Right? You're talking about a guy who talks at length about residual incomes and and family wealth. He knows that he's built pretty much the premier spot, especially for that F1, for the F1 racing and all that stuff. So, and that's going to be something that's going to consistently generate huge revenues for his businesses. I wouldn't sell it. I mean, you selling it to somebody, that means that whole stream is gone now at that point. Somebody else is benefiting from it. You don't work as hard as you work every day of your life to get to where you are, to not be able to continue building upon your legacy even after you're gone. I mean, I know he say he's 83, but he want to make sure his granddaughters and his great-granddaughters and his great-great-granddaughters are taken care of, and his grandsons too. So this is how you do it. And just taking an offer because that, it says 6.7, but that do offer 10. Hell, in 15 years, it could be worth 25. You feel me? Especially the way people are flocking to. That's a premier event that is going to, it's going to bring out the biggest of the big in terms of those people don't spare any expense when they come out to participate.
Game. I don't know if you heard, I don't know if you were backstage and you heard me reading it. They said the last 2 years it's generated $798 million that weekend for the economy. This year they're expecting it to generate $1 billion for the weekend.
Why would you walk away from that? Why would you sell it and walk? That's something that you can count on every time they have an event there happening. And one weekend though, think about how long it takes for a company to generate that type of revenue in a year's time. And he's going to do it in a weekend. That's a no-brainer. I applaud him for being smart enough to say, you know what, I'm not selling this is my cash cow. Yeah, I wouldn't give a shit what the tax was. I'm holding on to that because I know it's going to continue to be something that people are going to come and participate in. They're going to want to see that. F1 is never going anywhere, not anytime soon.
Yeah. Yeah, because
So,
it's really put it on the map in the U.S. Taryn says that Florida now has no inheritance tax.
it's even better. Good Lord.
Well, I'm looking right now. I Googled it, and Smart Asset says there's no inheritance tax in Florida, but other states' inheritance taxes may apply to you. Because he's from New York, so I don't know if it's going to apply to him, how that's going to work. And then another Alper Law says Florida does not have an inheritance tax or state tax, so the inheritance tax rate is 0. A beneficiary of a deceased person in Florida does not owe any state taxes on inherited property.
Yeah, that's even better.
Yeah,
that's a win. That's a win all the way around the board. Yeah. Good Lord.
Well, let me ask you this, guys. Would you be and I'll start with you, Richmond, because you've gone through an ownership change. Would you be opposed to an ownership change? Because the hedge fund owner who wants to take over the majority, he has about $25 more billion net worth than Ross. I mean, if you guys think about it, he's worth $10.1 billion. He got offered his net worth for this whole thing, while the guy who offered him is worth $35 billion. He's the richest man in South Florida. Would you guys be open to a fresh start? And I ask this because, I know a lot of people really, you hear a lot of the people, like, we can all admit, Ross has no problem cutting the checks, but a lot of people are weary of him. And a lot of people say, this team won't get right till him and Garfinkel and Greer are gone. And I say that because, and I think where those people are coming from is, if you guys remember correctly, Stephen Ross originally wanted to buy the New York Jets. We were the backup plan. Mm-hmm. There's things about the franchise he hates. Like, I know fans aren't going to like to hear it. I know he's not a fan of the throwbacks. I know he hates the throwbacks. And another thing that might sting fans that I don't know if they know, he hates that Dolphins song. I don't know if you guys know that, but he hates, like, when he got here, he tried to have T-Pain, like, get a remixed Dolphin song because he hates that old song that they play after they score touchdowns and stuff. Apparently he hates the song.
All right.
So he's a New York boy. He's not a Miami boy, right? So would you guys be like, let's say he turns around and his daughter says, "You know what, Dad? I don't want the team. I don't know if I can operate it. I don't know if I'll be able to keep my head above water financially," because he still has his hands in all these different companies, right? He's got streams coming through, right? She's just going to be inheriting everything, right? So, where would you guys be at if he was looking to sell to a guy worth 35? If he was looking to sell to the richest man in South Florida, $35 billion, and Ken Griffin, Richmond, where would you be with that? Would you start getting worried of, okay, well, now the front office is going to reset, the trickle effect down to the field is going to be felt? Where would you be with that?
Well, I think that's the part that everybody hadn't considered. There is an unknown. I went through it with, the Ruiz and Mr. Huizinga. I didn't have any control over it. But the fortunate thing was, he cared about the Dolphins and, he wanted to further. You can get a guy in there regardless of the money if he can be a bad owner. With Mr. Huizinga, even with Mr. Ross, the way they treat the alumni, the former players, this and that, all that could change in an instance. Let's say they could clean house in the front office, and it could just, not only for the former players, but for the players, to where now it's an environment that's been built in Miami to where free agents want to come here, where you get some owners and you can be like, no, I don't want, it's crazy down there, this and that. But and I get the song. The song is old. Matter of fact, the Houston Oilers, when they used to play the song, pretty much the same song, except they say the Houston Oilers. But I started laughing because it makes sense. If he wanted to buy the Jets first, all that pain we put on the Jets over the years, it makes sense that he would want to change that. So I ain't mad at Mr. Ross. If you want to change it, hey, let T-Pain do a remix. I'm sure he'll do a good job. If that's the last thing we got to worry about. But, that's the thing. It could be better. It could be about the same. It could be worse. It's just the unknown, and the person that has the control of that is Mr. Ross. So long as he owns the team, he makes that decision. And I say we good. It could be a lot worse. I think got one of the better front offices franchise, the way we treat our players now, the former players, this and that. So as long as it's still on that level, he makes that decision, that's fine. But the unknown is always what you got to deal with. It could be better, could be worse. So,
yeah. Grass ain't always greener on the other side. Joe Holt says, my special trust for 3 adopted special children, 1 child, 2 adults, presently creates no tax in Missouri, but fear whether they will change it. Hopefully they do not, sir. Ballgame, what are your thoughts on potentially changing ownership to a guy worth $35 billion?
Well, I think if we're being realistic, at some point it's going to have to change. Ross is 83 years old.
Yeah.
And no matter how much money he's got, eventually at some point, that knock comes for all of us. And it's going to have to happen. I think when you talk about guys at this level, though, right, when you talk about guys with that type of money, they've gotten to that point by being successful and doing things a certain type of way. And I would often, I have no reservations about new ownership. I think what for me, it's always about who it is, not whether it's going to be somebody, because it's going to happen at some point. It's got to happen. But I believe that they've built a culture there, and they've built a culture there that's going to sustain itself, regardless of who comes in as an owner. Because at the end of the day, that's up at a level where that guy just got to be informed of what's happening, right? And a smart man would know in business sometimes. Just because I own it don't mean I got to run it, right? I'm gonna put smart people in place to ensure that the success of the team and the organization as a whole thrives, right? It's not personal, it's business, right? And he got $35.something billion based off of doing good business, right? Now you gotta be frugal and mindful of a lot of things that just come along with being at that level with that type of money. But I don't think anybody's gonna look to buy the team and then change what's already being lucrative, right? So that's not something that I'm overly concerned about. I think the culture in itself can sustain itself through bad ownership, but I just don't believe that Ross would at any point leave it in the hands of someone that just doesn't know what the hell they're doing. Like,
I agree.
they've come too far to take steps backwards. And sometimes some change is good, right? Like him wanting to change the song. I hate that song too.
Yeah, I think it's a little corny too. To me.
Yeah. So
I agree. Now I don't agree with him on the. You want to know what I think? Boys?
I like the throwbacks now. Don't get me twisted.
I think our throwback should be permanent, and I think we should have an alternate jersey version of Richmond's era. Yeah,
those were the funky ones.
That's where I think we would look so sharp. Like and for Monday nights, listen, I loved the all orange color rush, but why not try to work with? Remember that navy pattern we had back with that one day night where we rocked that navy pattern and never rocked in? Like, I'd be down to. I don't know, man. Like, I'm not a massive fan of the new logo compared to the old logos. Right. Like I just, you know what I mean? Like we're starting to turn into a whale here. You know what I mean? Like, so.
Yeah, he used to be streamlined and look kind of tough.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And
even the eyes. Remember the way they did the eyebrow and stuff? The eyes on the dolphin looked mean. Now we're 2 steps away from a boy going like this and Free Willy coming over top, right? Like, that's
the logo. The logo is what you would call chuff. Starting to get chubby and buff at the same time. You know what I'm saying?
Easy, chuff.
Listen, I wanted to talk to you guys about this, and I'm glad Ballgame. I said to Richmond, I really wanted to talk to Ballgame about this. I want to hear you guys' thoughts on this. Okay, Coming out of the draft, okay. June 1st, we are a month away from getting another $18.5 million on the books.
Yeah.
We're gonna have about 22-ish million, okay? Now account for our draft class, whatever, that's like 4 or 5, that's like 4 million, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you only get one. Looking at our receiving core right now and looking at our secondary, would you prefer Odell Beckham Jr. on a $10 million 1-year mercenary deal, or would you prefer Justin Simmons on a 1-year, $10-ish million mercenary deal with the nudge and backdoor agreement of, hey, Javon Holland's coming up. If he ain't playing ball with us and he's ready to walk, and you perform this year, we'll give you the extension. Ball game, where would you be at with that, knowing Weaver, what he wants guys who are multiple, the three safety shells he's going to look? Right. Where would you be at with this? Because look at our depth too, ball game. Like, I'm more excited over Mark Perry and some of the UDFAs we added than Patrick McMorris, who they drafted in the 6th round, right? Like, I'm more excited about a couple of these UDFAs. That I say that to say the depth ain't good. It's McMorris, Elijah Campbell, and a bunch of UDFAs. Right.
I think for me at this point, like I said prior to the draft, I was hoping they was going to go out and grab one of those other boys that were a lot high, more productive than the McMorris kid for safety purposes. There's a huge hole back there. Like Poyer, he's a veteran and whatnot, but if the Javon, like you said, Javon don't play ball, then there's another hole that we got to fill later on, next year, and that's something that I don't even want to have to deal with. I'm going to give the money to Simmons, because one, I know he gonna come to work every day. He gonna do everything that's asked of him and more. And I don't have to deal with all that OBJ BS that's coming along with them. I don't want any of that, man. That's a distraction for me in terms of if I'm looking at player for player and what I can get for my dollar's worth. Like, there's gonna be a lot that comes along with signing an OBJ that you're not gonna have to worry about with the Justin Simmons. Aside from the fact that most people probably don't even know who he is when you actually, they really talking when you really talking ball, because they don't look at the defensive side of the ball as often as most people concern themselves with offensive players. I'm taking that guy because I know that I'm going to get my money's worth, and he's going to be there, and he's going to be ready to give me all that he's got. No questions asked, man. He's been a what I consider to be a perennial fixture every year in that Denver defense, minus the injuries. He's a guy that they could always depend on to hold that back end down for them and not have to worry about him. He's going to be there. And that's what I think this secondary is still lacking to some degree. Love Holland to death, but he's still young. And Justin brings a whole different element of experience and versatility that Weaver can take advantage of right out the gate. So, and OBJ, I mean, I don't know, man. I was never ever one of these people that gave a shit about the fact that he caught that ball with one hand. Because I'm a Randy Moss and Jerry Rice era guy. So I've seen, and Calvin Johnson, I've seen guys make phenomenal catches. And the fact that
Terrell,
he did that one.
T.O.
T.O. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? I mean, we saw these guys play up close, bro. Like, that catch to me was like, okay, it was nice. But, like, where's the consistency? Those guys were consistent. And I just, all that other stuff that come along with him, man, I don't want no parts of that, bro. I'd rather short defense, because you're going to need that anyway. Because everybody going to spread you out, and everybody wants to, put all these different other wide receiver packages on the field. You need dogs to be able to go out there and line up against it. So, and they're going to find a hole if you got one. But Justin Simmons, he's not a Band-Aid, bro. He's a full fix on that back end for us. And you get a lot of versatility. So that's where I'd put the money at.
Listen, Richmond, let me set the picture for you, because we talked about it earlier. Ball game probably missed what we said earlier. You got Justin Simmons. He's 30 years old. All right. He, since 2016, 603 tackles, 30 interceptions. All right. He's got a career NFL passer rating allowed of 79.9. All right. The guy is, and he's also got, 30 pass breakups in that time. The guy is just, in the discussion for best safety in football. Or you had a guy like OBJ, who you saw what he did with the Rams, how instrumental he was. I mean, he scored the first touchdown in the Super Bowl for them, and then he got injured, but he was having a great playoffs for them. Or do you bring a guy like OBJ after what me and you talked about earlier, that Big O is apparently reporting that this is going to be Tyreek's last year? Because the thing with that is, like, here's the thing. if they approached Tyreek and they said, hey, you know, we're off of you after this year, things could get nasty if Tyreek don't get his way this year because he knows he's out the door. Would you bring a guy like OBJ into that situation if that is factual? Or would you prefer bringing in a baller at the free safety like Justin Simmons, who, again, can be used in leverage in your negotiations with Javon Holland?
Yeah, I agree with Ball Game and most of the people that tuned in from the chat. I think Simmons is just makes more sense. More durable, like you say, he's been consistently in year in year out. OBJ's had his, he's had some injuries, this and that, and the other factor you got to bring in is, we're playing in Miami, and at times he can be a distraction. And Miami can be a huge, huge distraction, especially if you live there, if you can't handle it. So I think it was a couple of years ago he took that boat ride, or it was something like that. But
the Giants.
Right for a game. Yeah. And it's like, everybody, you'll see all the stars and stuff like that. But to me, it just makes more sense and gives you insurance in the event that like that Holland is coming up. If they can't sign him, you can easily slide that guy right in and still have a ball in your secondary. So to me, it makes sense. And like I said, even with OBJ or Odell or whatever, even with Tyreek, even if this is Tyreek's last year, I think with Waddle in the receiver room, we got enough guys, in their youth that we can still survive that. I think Waddle is the number one. Like I said earlier, he's been up under Tyreek. He's learned things. Tyreek was beneficial, but to me, I think if it's a choice between, Simmons or OBJ, I would go with Simmons as well. I think it just makes more sense, and it's not even close to me. I think it just makes more sense to go with Simmons in that choice.
Yeah, I agree. Let's get into some Chop Robinson, because this is some very interesting information we got. Before we get into the information about Chop, I want to just show you guys, gentlemen, he called his shot. Chop called his shot about coming to Miami, and he ended up being spot on. And this is what I'm talking about. Watch this. When Jared Verse got selected and Chop was up.
They got Verse.
LA was too far away anyway. I
ain't want to pay them taxes anyway. I'm good. I don't want to pay them taxes. Feel me? I need Miami.
This man drinking a Capri Sun.
I need Miami. I want somewhere warm anyway. Let Pitt get a corner and come get me, Miami, please.
So this man drinks a Capri Sun. It says Miami, come get me. And what's interesting, gentlemen, is I've been saying on the channel since we drafted him,
That's funny.
I believe Chop was a top 18 or top 15 on their board. Look at what Omar Kelly tweeted today. And I've said it on this channel. I've said it privately. I believe he was a top 18, top 15 pick on their board. Look what Omar Kelly tweeted out today. This totally floored me. Dolphins first-round pick Chop Robinson was rated the 12th best prospect on an AFC team's board, according to his source. His upside is massive. The only thing you have to question is his toughness. You guys have had a little bit of time to digest the pick, to digest Chop Robinson, and who also, check this one out, gentlemen. He is going to be, look at what Blake Ferguson said.
Ferguson here from the Miami Dolphins checking in, and I'm realizing that the video in the last post was way too long, but here's the deal. I heard from Chop very early Friday morning as he was making his way to Miami Gardens, and he was just expressing to me how important the number 44 was to him, and asked if I would be willing to consider taking a different number. And I found that the jersey number that I wore for my last 2 years in college and that I was able to win a national championship in was available, the jersey number 48. And so that's the number I'll be in moving forward.
So there you go. So Blake Ferguson is giving his number to Chop Robinson as well. So I want to get your guys' thoughts on I will start with you, Ball Game. Your thoughts on an AFC team having Chop as a top 12 player on their big board, and man, him getting this number 44. I'm Bradley. You got to look over your shoulder, Bradley, because here comes Chop, baby. What are your thoughts on Chop being rated that high when you saw so many fans react negatively to this pick?
Well, I had him 1A and 1B, so I knew that when the Rams took Verse, he was the next guy up. And I think what people fail to realize though is that like when they say they question his toughness, but like the kid legitimately put himself into a space at times because of his pressure rate that teams abandoned their pass games and just chose to run the ball. And I don't know about most people that don't play football, but yeah, anybody toughness is gonna get, you know what I'm saying? Anybody toughness is gonna get questioned and checked. If you're getting ran at 27, 28 times a game and you got 2 or 3 people that are blocking you on any given play, you feel me? Like, he's only human. So that toughness thing, they're looking at it from the wrong standpoint. I'm looking at it as that he was actually willing to be in there engaging when guys was chipping him and they were sending the extra body at him and hitting him, you know what I'm saying? The tight end and the tackle was working off him, trying to make, you know what I'm saying, trying to work through him to get to the next level and trying to eliminate him from the play altogether. You can't just do that on a day. You can't do that on a play in and play out basis if you ain't got some level of toughness to you. And teams legitimately, you know what I'm saying, they legitimately abandoned, like when we talked about it, Michigan abandoned their passing and ran the ball 40-some times because he was disrupting the passing game so much. So toughness, that's like the least of my concerns. My question is how he gonna look trying to drop out in coverage a little bit, and even that can be taught. So, but toughness is not one of them. I think when people, you know what I'm saying, it's not a sexy pick, and I think people got kind of spoiled the previous years where we had an abundance of first round picks, but they're not factoring in that. Damn, if you only got 1 pick and you're in the 20s, I mean, you had a pretty successful season the year prior, and you're well on your way to having something great happen for you. Like you're building towards a level of success that you haven't seen. When you got 3 first round picks in the first draft, you sucked. You feel me? I don't care how anybody, I don't care, you know, you can say what you want to say, but that's what that means, right? And there was a period where we sucked, but we don't suck anymore. So like, man, take the picks for what they are. Look at the kid's tape. He was a high quality pick. And I think we got to steal that 21, considering that AFC team is probably not the only team that had him rated in the top 15, 18 players. And we got him at 21. He fell to us. I know they wanted Verse, but you got the next guy up. And I don't see, there's the only thing I think Jared has over him is Jared's a little older. With a little bit more, a little bit more experience from playing.
And let me ask you this, Ball Game. As a coach, wouldn't you rather the 21-year-old that you can mold and you can you know, because he's not really set in on habits yet, because it's not like he was running 80% snap counts too, right?
Exactly. So I'm taking, if I gotta choose between a 23-year-old and a 21-year-old playing the same position, I'm taking the 2 years of youth, because I know that's 2 years of, like you said, unblemished canvas that I get to mold into using and doing what I need him to do. You know what I'm saying? And if he does have any bad issues or bad, you know what I'm saying, bad habits, it's not gonna take me long to get them out of him, because he's you know what I'm saying, he's a clean slate.
Yeah.
He never played it down in the NFL, so he doesn't know what he doesn't know. All he knows is that he was drafted off of what he's previously done, and he was athletically enough with a score that put him in the highest percentile, you know what I'm saying, in terms of players that played that position. Now, these are things that I know he knows, but I don't think at any point Chop Robinson, there was never no report that said that he wasn't coachable. There was no report to say that he wasn't able to go out and execute what was asked of him from his coaches. Yeah, all those things work in his favor. And man, at the end of the day, people they have to really look at this pick and say to themselves, I was wrong, and be willing to admit that this kid's gonna be a stud for us.
Oh, he's gonna be awesome. I mean, you're talking about like all defenders in college football. He was 6th in pass rush win rate. He had a 20.8% last year. You look at it, this quick pressure rate, 13%. He was second in time to pressure. He was getting pressure in about 2.28 seconds. And he was third in overall pressure rate, about 18.7%. Like, oh, disgusting. What do you think, Richmond? I mean, you went up against Bruce Smith. You went up against Reggie White. And you look at this kid might have one of the, you hear some analysts say it's one of the, Daniel Jeremiah said it's one of the most explosive first steps he's ever seen. And those pressures, I mean, people say, well, Richmond, well, he didn't have the sacks. Well,
They're missing it.
Olivier Vernon had 9 sacks during his time at Miami with the Hurricanes. He had 11.5 sacks in his second season in the NFL, and he finished with over 60 sacks in his career. You look at TJ Watt, you look at Danielle Hunter, only had 4.5 sacks during
high pressure rates, though.
LSU, but high pressure rates. So what do you think when you see a player like Chop Robinson with arguably next to Marius Mims, the tackle from Georgia, the highest ceiling in the entire draft?
Yeah, I think the mistake a lot of fans, and it's not just Dolphin fans, a lot of time they look at these mock drafts and they get their mindset on, we need to take this guy, we need to take this guy, we need to take. And when the team goes a different direction, it doesn't mean that the player that they chose is a bad player. I mean, he's a hell of a player, but in their mind, they're like, we should have took this. But I'm like, that's where you got to make the disconnect and say, I really like this other guy, but I'm a fan. I'm not in the room where they're picking up the phone and this is our selection bit. I watched his highlights, and like I said earlier, he's a high motor guy. And if you're calling that pressures, that means even if you don't get the sack, other guys are eating because you're putting so much pressure. He's got to try to escape some kind of way. So I think people look at the sacks, but sometimes you need to look at who's causing the pressure, because you can flush him out to cause other guys to make plays. And I think that's the difference a lot of times, where the scouting department or whatever look at it and say, no, he didn't get the sacks, but look at he's done. He's causing other guys that's on the defense with him to go out here and make plays, or flushing him out the pocket to still get done or achieve what needs to be achieved. So I think we've got a really good pick now. When I was I was listening to Blake Ferguson, I believe he got a little cheddar for
sure. How much was something like that? Like, how much back in the day when you were around? How much would that cost? Like, what?
I'm trying to remember if I ever played with somebody that actually did that bet. At times it could be really, really expensive, and it just depends on, like, if it's a high caliber player, like I said, a first rounder, bit like say like a Devontae Adams. If he really wants that number, and you're a guy, it's a way you can really, make some money. So I don't know what it is, the going rate is now, what it would cost, but I'm sure, even though he's a first rounder, he broke him off something. So he's like, yeah, let me go back to my college number 48, get this paper, and I'm good. So that's why I was kind of laughing.
50 G's? You think we're talking like 50 G's? Because I know some players when they're attached to a number, it could cost you well over 100,000 to get that off them. Yeah. Like,
it could easily cost you 50. And the way he said it, like, he was almost like, bro, you don't understand. I really need this number. It's almost like he don't think he will perform as well if he don't get the number. Where before, when I came in the league, like I wore 56 in college. So tackles, a center guard could win the 50s, but I had to be in the 60s or the 70s. But now they've made this change with the numbers. That's why a lot of guys going back getting their college numbers, and you're seeing numbers all over the place that you wouldn't see before. So I can tell it's important to Chop, and he made it happen. So it wouldn't surprise me if you gave him 50 grand for it. It wouldn't surprise me at all.
Nice little payday for a long snapper, huh? Jeez Louise.
Yes, sir.
Jeez. All right. Anything you want to add before we get out of here?
No. My man Ball Game, he keep chiming in and out. He must be having some audio issues. But I thought, talking about some of the scenarios, looking, I didn't know that about Mr. Ross and what he's dealing with as far as having the kind of money and then having to make that decision and then to be able to have the money to where you can say, no, I don't need it, so I'm gonna stick with what I want to keep in the family. Talking about Chop Robinson, it kind of reminded me of I wasn't that specific. I wanted to go somewhere warm, but he said Miami, come get me. I could have learned from Chop back in the day. So, but other than that, good, really great show again. Just glad to be back. Like I said earlier, I had a great time and just glad to be back on the show with you guys.
We had over 900 people join us tonight between X and YouTube, even with the Miami Heat on. So I want to thank you all. Ball Game, you got anything to add?
I was trying to figure out how to read this without getting kicked out the chat, but like my philosophy and on defense has always been very similar to the greats, man. And Bill Belichick, I remember I'd gone and was listening to him talk once, and he was up at Boston College, and he said that sacks are a phenomenal stat for individuals. He said, but I don't, and I won't ever scheme my defense up for sacks. If my guys get there, those are things that I applaud them for and they get paid for, of course. He said, but I scheme pressure. My defense is always about pressure. And he said pressure is what quarterbacks hate more than getting sacked, because you can sack a quarterback, and unless it's a strip fumble, they still have a possession and they can go hit you in the next play and get that first down anyway. But if I got consistent pressure on this quarterback, it's speeding up his processing time. He's getting jittery in the pocket. He starts second guessing himself, and now he's playing my game instead of me playing his game. He says, so pressure is what we always going to be about, right? And he said, and as a defensive coordinator, if that's not your goal, he said, you will fail at your job. Constant pressure is what you need to generate all the time. Sacks will happen because you'll have phenomenal athletes that can also provide pressure and get there and win their one-on-one. But don't get caught up in sacks. Always generate pressure. And Bill Belichick said it best. So I don't know what else people want, but that's going to be
I mean, Ball Game in Richmond, you guys have been watching. When Brady would come here, right? When he'd come to Miami,
he hated
the pressure. Not only would it hit him, the consistent pressure. He hated playing in Miami. He had one of his worst road records of his career was in Miami, right? And just because guys like Cam Wake and stuff, exactly. Like the problem is, Ball Game, these people that box score watch that don't watch tape, unless you have a PFF subscription, there's no quantifiable number for pressure to them. So because they don't see it lined up in an everyday box score on ESPN, it's out of sight, out of mind, where if you've played the position, if you've played on the defensive line, if you've coached, right? If you've played offensive line, you know how much pressure can affect. I mean, perfect example. Defensive tackles that are getting paid right now are guys who are creating pressure quickly up the middle, right? Because it's faster than arcing off the edge. And when you're right in a guy's face, you throw the timing off, you throw the play off, you throw everything off. When you force guys to extend, not everyone is Patrick Mahomes, and things can go very wrong. Get out of structure, right? That's why Sean Payton hated how Russell Wilson never played in structure, because things can go very, very wrong when you don't stick to the script. And I'm telling you, man, like there's just some hand stuff to clean up, and I'm not even worried about him finishing off. I think you're going to see one of the most explosive pass rushers in the NFL by year 2 or year 3. I really, truly believe that. And I believe him and Muhammad Kamara,
bro.
Not only have they put Chubb on notice because we got the out next year, but I'm going to tell you this much. Yes, sir, because Phillips, you're probably going to be playing on your 5th year while they pay Holland, while they pay Tua and Waddle and such, and they're going to be sticking around, and he's going to have to perform. He's gonna have to perform, and next year and the year after, he's gonna have to finish seasons healthy, and he's gonna have to perform because they're gonna turn around at the end of that 5th year. And if Muhammad Kamara and Top Robinson start getting towards their ceilings by the end of year 2, when you gotta
walk away from they did a masterful job of going out and grabbing these young boys, man. Because
smart.
You don't see cats in college. The dude had 13 sacks in 12 games, bro.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? That's not an easy feat, and his pressure rate is right up there too. Like he legitimately, he's built like Shaq Barrett too. That's the crazy part. Like they're from the same type of mold. So yeah, everybody's on notice up front on that D line. Yeah.
And you know what? And even for just this year alone, if Chubb and Phillips get back to 80% of themselves, mixed in with Shaq, Mo, and Chop, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be in for a very fun watch. Guys, smash the like button, subscribe if you're new. I will be live tomorrow with Neil, 5 o'clock. We are going to discuss further into his report about the Miami Dolphins trying to trade up with the Baltimore Ravens at 30, who they were targeting, and all of that. So do not miss tomorrow's show. All right, guys? Smash the like button, subscribe if you're new. And that Sis and Deceased came from Margaritaville. So it's Go Fins. And we'll see y'all on the next one. Take it easy, guys.